First of all, I didn't.
I mean, it's really.
You get it.
Yeah.
What did you
Well, you
write?
want to be reminded,
No,
though.
it's like a cliffhanger.
It's on the report.
How do you
Says
know?
none.
It is a cliffhanger.
Awesome. All right.
So you have it by default.
That was the end of executive session. Do I have a motion to exit executive session?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Motion made by Mr. Heidick to exit executive session. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to exit our executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. We are now back in the committee of the whole meeting at 7:58 p.m. We're going to kick it off back on track with citizens addressing council. Thank you, Mrs. Angela. All right, and we'll go into committee reports with street, sidewalk, and lighting with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, sidewalks, lighting met this evening at 6 o'clock here in council chambers. All members were present along with council and guests as noted. I have one request for legislation. Legislation requested by Todd Shreve, Interim Director of Public Service, to allow the mayor to enter into contract with Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for the improvement of Worcester Road West from Robinson Avenue to 4th Street, NEB 06537. Emergency wording is requested. This is the final resolution that needs to be passed. The total project is $206,466. Amex is assuming 80%, and the city of Barberton is assuming the 20%. This was passed out of committee. Second, pending legislation, Resolution 4, 2022, Barberton Complete Streets Policy. The final change was approved by the Planning Commission at their January meeting. It was amended. The amended version that was approved by PC was 2.1. The final and third reading will be February 14th. A report from Todd Shreve regarding the winter storm Landon, and with that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Angela. All right, next up is planning, annexation, and codes with Mrs. Taylor.
Alrighty. Planning, annexation, and codes met this evening at 6:11 p.m. We discussed the request for legislation, where is it here? Amending Barberton Codified Ordinance, the ICC International Property Maintenance Code, an ordinance amending ordinance number 126/2020 to amend the Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 1462.06 amendments to follow updated versions of the International Property Maintenance Code, or IPMC. We also had two requests for appointments for the Planning Commission, a Mr. Anthony Harmon as well as a Mr. Keith Holcomb, and both of those were passed this evening. We had no miscellaneous discussion, and that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. City utilities, Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met January 24th in Chambers. At that time, we had two committee members. We welcome you aboard as our third. We had no request for legislation. We voted on the two pending legislations that we did have. They both passed, and we had no miscellaneous discussion. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Colbert. Next up, public welfare and safety with Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met on Monday, January 24th at 6:01. We were in council chambers. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council people and guests, as noted on my agenda sheet. We had several requests for legislation. The first was a letter from
Lisa Kolish-Miller, our law director, requesting to authorize the mayor to enter into a 3-year agreement with the city of New Franklin for prosecutorial services, and emergency wording was requested. We also got another letter from Mrs. Lisa Kolish-Miller, the law director, requesting to authorize the mayor to enter into a 3-year agreement with the city of Greene for prosecutorial services. Emergency wording was also requested on that particular piece of legislation, in that letter. The third piece of legislation that was requested was also from Lisa Kolish-Miller, our law director, requesting to authorize the mayor to enter into a 3-year agreement with the city of Norton for administrative services provided by the city of Barberton. All these particular letters have a contract with them, and we did not have them at last week's meeting. However, Mrs. Miller has provided the contracts to all of us on the committee. And as yet, the communities that are involved have not signed those contracts. Therefore, we'll be going for 3 readings, and we won't vote on it until we know that the contracts have been signed by the communities that are involved. And on these contracts, it listed how much we will get for the next 3 years. Per year, it told what they would pay us for the prosecutorial services. And New Franklin's contract is much lower than Greene's because we only have half the caseload from New Franklin that we have from Greene. And Norton's contract is for administrative services only because they provide their own prosecutors. As I said, these will go for 3 readings, and they might not go the whole 3. If we get the contract signed from the communities, we might vote on it before that time. We had one piece of pending legislation last week, and it was ordinance number 9-2022. It was to enter into contract with Oriana House, and this was an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a 1-year contract with Oriana House Incorporated for the 2022 Community Corrections Contract, and that had emergency wording on it, and that passed. This is something that we do each year. There was no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, public welfare and safety will pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Fry, for that report. Next up, Rules, Marketing, and Development with Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on January 24th. All members present and other guests as noted. We had no request for legislation to call for and no miscellaneous discussion. We adjourned at 6:12. With that, I pass, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Environmental Health and Social Services with Mrs. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Environmental Health and Social Services Committee met tonight at 6:11 p.m. in council chambers. All committee members were present, all other council members were present, and all others were as noted. There were no requests for legislation, no pending legislation, and no miscellaneous discussion. We adjourned at 6:11 p.m., and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. City Properties, Parks and Recreation, Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties Park Recreation met January 24th, 6:01 in Chambers. Members present, myself, Sean Jaber, Mr. Thomas Heidig, and Mrs. Carol Fry. Other council members also present. We had no new request for legislation. We did have 2 pending legislations, ordinance number 7-2022, and also ordinance number 8-2022. We had no remarks on both of those, and we had no miscellaneous discussion, and we adjourned at 6:03. And with that, I pass, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Jaber. Finance and Personnel with Mr. Heidig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to Council Rule 401A2, Finance and Personnel requested legislation. There was a legislation request from Mayor Judge for ordinance adopting the 2022 operating capital budget with emergency wording requested. Was passed out of committee to the floor. Thank you much.
When did you go adjourn?
What's that?
Adjourn? Well, you're just going to forego the entire report? Is that what you're
According to
saying?
401A2, I deemed
Got it.
that there was no full report not necessary, only to call for requested
Thank you.
legislation.
Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just received notice that the Ohio Supreme Court again rejected the state legislative maps that were drawn up for redistricting. They are sending them back to the drawing board, and the court gave the commission until February 17th to come up with a new plan. So, they haven't said if this is going to push back the primary for those districts. So, I've met with our I won't call them existing, but the two state reps that we had from 2021, and the two that were going to be our state reps under the first map. So I don't know where this puts us. I don't know where this puts the voters, but they do have until February 17th to redraw and confirm those maps. So obviously more to come on that. A little bit, I don't want to keep everyone here all night, but the Worcester Road, Robinson Avenue reconstruction, a little history with that. That was all designed in the late 90s by the Summit County engineer from multiple engineers ago. My first year on council in 2004 is when we cut the ribbon for that. So if you recall, there's a whole new bridge that went in. The old viaduct from Tusk was torn down. And even as we were walking away from cutting the ribbon, comments were made that this is not the best plan.
I say,
And,
I say.
So,
Exactly what I said.
and we've seen multiple accidents of, people trying to navigate going up Worcester Road West, trying to turn on Worcester Road North, the little
God.
island there and all that. So we applied for some safety funding, and I just hope in, 15, 20 years, someone's going, oh, what they did back in 2021, 22 was wrong. So I'm glad to see this come to fruition because there's been a number of accidents. But if you remember before with the old viaduct, sides would try to go underneath the bridge and get stuck.
Yeah.
Because it went underneath.
Cut the tops of the trucks off. Oh, gosh.
So we're really excited about this project. Change for Change is on Friday, February 25th, benefiting the Magical Theater at the Barberton Leader Topple on 2nd Street. COVID, change is the only constant with COVID, but it's great to see the numbers really going down and moving in the right direction. You may have seen the article in the Beacon Journal this weekend surrounding that the death rate in Summit County for 21 outpaced the birth rate, which they're typically about 6,000 each. And it was well over 7,000 on the death rate side, and a little increase on the birth rate. It's never a happy time or a good time when we're still in a state of emergency to open up the paper and see 4 or 5 pages of obits. We're losing a lot of good people. But we'll continue to monitor the various stats and information and numbers associated with COVID. And we're still working with all of our partners at the local level, county, state, and federal level as well. So I talked to Councilman Heidick, had an individual from the city who applied with an application for the planning commission. But his application came in after the two that you discussed tonight. So I emailed him to see if he'd be willing to sit on any other boards. And he responded in email that he would like to sit on the design review board. So I'd like to send his application for planning commission with the email saying that he now would like to be on design review board instead of having him fill out a whole new application. So I wanted to let council know that will come. I will cross out planning commission, write design review board, put my initials, but I want to let you know that that's coming. And the email him saying that he's okay with that.
They're the same questions, correct?
Yes.
Mr.
I should have a new application to council here very, very soon.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When the mayor and I talked, the Plan Commission and Design Review Board kind of are in a horizontal thing, so I told him I would personally have no problem with crossing a Plan Commission off running Design Review Board. We brought up one in the past where somebody had one for Utilities Board, but it was really for something else, and every answer on there had to do with that board, which was totally the opposite of where we was going. But I told him I feel it's the same pertinent information between Plan Commission and Design Review Board work
It
kind
still
of hand in
falls
hand.
under planning.
So
yeah.
to have it mark off that and the gentleman's still willing to do it, I said I would have no problem with that. Thank you.
And then just finally, as we go through the budget, questions are going to come up. Feel free to email me, feel free to call, and we can set up a meeting. And if I can't explain it right, then I'll bring in the department head or Mr. Flaker. And then anything you email me with questions, I can respond to all of council or bring to the next Monday meeting. Because I guarantee if you have a question on something, one of your colleagues has a question on something, the same question. So feel free to reach out and we'll get back in touch with you on any questions that you have. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Is there any-
Mr. Mayor, next week,
Yes.
are we gonna be at Active Adult, or you still don't know yet?
That's up to him.
So
No.
everything
No,
is
you think got it done?
everything is set up there.
Okay.
I spoke to IT today, and they did not feel that the sound quality would be picked up over the internet because it feeds through the existing speakers in the ceiling, which have got to be 15-plus years old,
Okay.
and that's where the issue is. It works, but he feels that the sound quality may not be picked up by people watching it at home. So even though the numbers are projecting down this week, I told them to go forward and get it ready, and order through Amazon or whatever you can do to get up and running. So I'll stay in touch with Councilman Greer, President Greer, and on how that goes. So
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Anything from the body? Mr. Jaber?
Thanks, Mr. President. First, I want to thank Mr. Todd Shreve and the service guys and Ms. Liz Doherty with the safety department. They did a good job with the plowing and the snow, and also safety forces did go give out some citations. I personally seen one on 4th Street. The officer knocked on the door and made sure the person move, but they didn't move, so they did give him a citation. So I think if you see something, right away call dispatch. Personally, if you guys driving by in your ward or a different ward, just make that call. That way we can make it easier for the plow guys, because the plow guys were appreciated. A couple of cars were going on 4th Street. Made it easier for those guys. And they did a great job. Thanks, sir. And with that, I pass.
Anything else from the body? Ms. Coburn?
Yes, I had people call me about cars that had been parked. They had 2 days to move and didn't. Officers went right out and ticketed them and took care of it. So when they're very busy, but if we reach out to them and let them know where we need their help, they're right there.
All right. Anything else from the body? Department heads? All right. I have a couple things. On our agendas, there was some confusion about the locations on the agendas. If you look at it, it said like jury room and courtroom again. That was just a residual thing that's going to be fixed. We're going to be meeting here in council chambers as we have been the new way, just like this. So there's no change. Everybody will get an updated agenda next week. I have no intentions on moving, but I appreciate the mayor having that set up as an option, because you never know. We could have to make that decision and move right away. And with that set up, it just makes that process a lot easier. Mrs. Doherty?
I just have a question about, as long as we're here and all in one room and not going back to the other way, are we still going to have committee of the whole and then do it again?
So it was my next point. Part of the process of improving council and streamlining it and giving us more opportunities to talk about things that actually matter and not be here all night. I'd like to keep things formal. It was brought up last week that we're very repetitive on things, how we say things. I like that. I don't know if I like the repetitiveness, and I think everybody's on board. Mrs. Fry, when I first got on before president, she threw these ideas, and I was like, those are great ideas. And I was surprised that everybody else was kind of thinking them. Mr. Heidick today demonstrated that we can forego committee meetings. I would like to try to possibly explore the avenues of the report process of committees if we're all going to be here. Make it, whether it's a decision made by myself not to even go into committee reports or individually in the committees, and you can just say that, I'm not going to report. However that's going to work, I'm up for suggestions. I still want to leave the possibility in the realm for people to say they want to provide one, or they would like for a committee to still provide a report. So we're still have an avenue to be able to do it, but streamline that process, because we are, we're constantly re-saying things over and over again, so that was.
Regarding that, if you forego the committee report, are you able, like during a committee meeting, able to ask for remarks at that point, or no?
Well, you couldn't ask, I'm sorry, I don't understand. what
Like
you're
during
saying.
the committee of the whole meeting?
Like regarding something that happened?
If anybody has questions, are they able to ask it at that point? Like if you want them to review it, are you able to say?
Well, it would be just a report, just like we were doing, Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. Accordance to 401A2, it is up to each chairs, as long as, the rule does state, as long as we are meeting inside the chambers, it is up to the individual chairperson to decide whether a full committee report is necessary. So
Right.
if your committee that you chair, you deem it necessary to read more or to read more comments because it may have been a week before and you want to
Yeah.
rehash it, that
Yep.
would be up to you as the chairperson. But as in tonight, I had one request for legislation. We were all here. During my committee were all the budget hearings. I'm not going to rehash that.
Yeah.
I made sure that the legislation that was requested and passed out of committee was called for their committee of the whole. In accordance to that rule, because we met in the chambers, that's all I needed to do.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
Ms.
you,
Frye?
Mr. President.
I wanted to say, tonight, my report really was kind of necessary because of the fact that we did not have the contracts the prior
Sure,
week.
yeah.
So if it came to me, I could just update people saying that we got the contracts and we're gonna go through readings, but if they get signed by the communities, then we're going to, maybe only do 2 readings because they have the emergency wording. But I think just in those instances where maybe something was missing or there was some, confusion or something wasn't answered properly, then we could do the committee meetings.
Right, and that's kind of what we're,
Yeah.
that's what I want to look at as a council. I think we're all we can agree that we talk the same thing, we repeat it over and over again.
Right.
And, Ms. Angela?
Yes, it seems as though when I was on planning, I had lots to say, and when I'm on streets, I have lots to say. So I go through that whole thing, and then I turn around and say it. And so I try to go really quickly by giving an outline. And it's really not necessary, because I've already spent 30 minutes or 25 minutes
Sure.
on it and opened up questions.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I'm all for maybe the week that half of us have the committee of the whole meeting, or have our committee meeting, then we don't have to go through the committee of the whole meeting.
So, I think that's what we'll explore. I don't know how soon we can do that. As of right now, the rules state that you can do it now. I'd like to try to be on board and unify in that process and streamline it so we're all aware and that we can have our ducks in a row when we do that, because there's going to be that perception that we're skipping out on
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
responsibilities. So I want to make sure that we're all in line with getting the proper information out and educating people on what we're doing, why we're doing it, and whatever. Ms. Colbert?
Our committee meetings are live now?
Correct.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah,
it's not like when
It's
we
already
were in the
recorded.
separated rooms, we're live and,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
That's, I just
So-
wanted to confirm that.
if anybody has any more ideas that we've seen demonstrated today on how that works, then we'll just send them over in a group message, and we'll look at it and see if we can't adjust possibly even the next committee of the whole meeting and see how it goes, and work out the bugs. I'm sure it's going to have its road bumps. So, is there anything else from the committee? Ms. Frye?
I just wanted to say, welcome aboard, Erica. And you
Thank
did a
you.
fabulous job for your first time.
Thank you, thank you.
It seems as though you've been watching us for years.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, very good job. Seeing nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:22 PM.
Holy cow.
I beg your pardon?
Holy cow.